Okay, Mayor, I want to start with the council meeting. Well, most of the council meeting was spent, I think it was a 50-minute meeting. I think I counted 36 minutes spent on Baltus property acquisition. Maybe to summarize some of the discussion and what was the decision in the end, which way is the council going on that?
It was a good discussion. It ended up, I believe, 8-1 on that, and so to purchase that property, and there was concerns there, and we learned a lot about, I think, how we're going to have to do things within the city. This vote, or this purchase, the Common Council had been talking about in closed session for about 4 months, going back and forth with a lot of different, tell us about the property and environmental issues and pros and cons, price, negotiation, everything else that you would go over in those. So there was several hours worth of discussion on that. Prior to that, the EDB and concurrently with the council had been working on this, I believe, for about a year.
Yeah.
And so there was a lot of information that went to this, and then after one of the final closed session council meetings, the decision was made to go ahead and make an offer to purchase. However, the statute calls that before we do that, it needs to go to the Planning Commission. And therein lies the issue that we had, because when it went to, you have literally tens, I'd venture to say hundreds of hours of discussion on this between the council and the EDB and all the different factions. And then when it goes to the Planning Commission, they're given a 5-minute presentation on what this was. And there was some background information, but there wasn't as extensive background information as I think that the Planning Commission could make a decision. I believe that if the Planning Commission, all local residents of Marshfield, very well qualified, they ask good questions. If they would have known about the hours of negotiations and that all these concerns were taking place and everything else, I believe the discussion would have been a little bit different. I think there was an assumption there that everyone knew that this was kind of going on and thought this was going to be easy. And then when the Planning Commission started to ask questions, a lot of the questions that they asked were kind of questions that have already been gone over, but those weren't in the presentation. So at that time, the Planning Commission unanimously said, no, this doesn't make sense for us with the information that we had. So that goes into the consent agenda, and then the code says that we have to run it by the commission prior to making a final action. So it doesn't necessarily mean that we have to go by that action. And so then we brought it back up to the council on if they still wanted to proceed. Had a great conversation, a very robust conversation on pros and cons of going back and forth. The ground contamination came up, and it was, Dan Connect got up and clearly stated what it was and how it could be remediated. There were other concerns, and then I think there was more spirited conversation on the fact of this gives us multiple uses. The initial one is as parking for the police department because they need that additional parking. And Alderman McSwain was very emphatic about the fact that acquiring this property is literally going to save us millions of dollars. And there were other concerns that came up. Mr. Witzel had some concerns. His concerns were, of course, based on, well, what did the Planning Commission see? And then that had to be explained. And then I think very interestingly, I think the first vote that we had on this a couple of weeks ago was 7-2.
I think it was 7-2.
7-2. And then when we went to vote this time, it picked up another vote and it went 8-1. So I think there was enough information there. And then I did hear from Mr. Penker, very qualified person on the Planning Commission, the following day saying that he appreciated the efforts of what took place and how we had a discussion. So it is going to go through. Mr. Baltus was at the meeting. He didn't get up and speak, but it was a well thought out decision.
Yeah, if I could just add a little bit to that. I mean, it's a kind of a interesting thing that has us in front of the commission anyway. It comes from state law, section 62.23 of Wisconsin statutes, that says, and we didn't know this until a couple of years ago, that actually requires that a municipality, if they're purchasing or acquiring a property and looking to reuse it in some way, needs to run it by the commission for review and comment. 4 years ago, when we signed on to buy this building with Ford, if that had been the case, if we had known that, we would have had to run that by them as well. And what if they'd said, well, we don't think that ought to be a government building. We think that ought to be a retail or a commercial establishment. I mean, the intent of the whole thing, and I respect the commission entirely, just as the mayor does. But in this case, their review is really supposed to be more on, does it comply with plans? Is there anything about the possible reuse of the property that's being discussed that would be in violation of the comprehensive plan, a strategic plan, downtown master plan, zoning code, and not to substitute their judgment for that of the council? So it's different than when they look at a rezoning. I think the council values the commission's opinion greatly, and when they recommend approval of a rezoning or a conditional use permit or a change to the code itself, I think the council almost always approves that unless they have some unbeknownst reason for not. But in this case, it's really the council is trying to acquire a property for a possible municipal use, and the commission really should be looking at simply, does it comply with plans? Now, if you look at the text of the statute, it's not that confining, but in talking with the League of Wisconsin Municipalities attorney, it does sound like that's more the expectation of the commission, that it wouldn't be all encompassing as a review, but it would be kind of focused on compliance with current plans. And I hope they feel valued. This was not a slap in the face of the commission. We respect all of our boards, committees, and commissions, and that will continue to be the case.
So basically plans, not purpose. They can't look at use.
Well, you look at the comprehensive plan and the downtown master plan and those kind of things. It does indicate that certain portions of the downtown or the community, the hope is that over time it will become more commercial or more residential or whatever. It gives those kind of indications. I understand they're not thrilled. I wasn't at the plan commission meeting, but I understand the commission's not thrilled with the idea of maybe that becoming a parking lot someday. They don't see that as maybe the best use of that parcel and how it fits into the overall downtown. But again, as much as I respect them, their mission here, I think, is not substituting their judgment for the council's, but really, is there something they can point to and say, look, this is in direct violation of the zoning code or in direct violation of the downtown master plan, and there really isn't a smoking gun of that nature, even if you don't think, because parking lots are allowed all over downtown. I mean, we put them in as need be, and we could take them out as need be. I think they were maybe going a little beyond their statutory expectation, even though I respect their view. But I think the council made a good decision in coming back and saying, we heard you, we get your concerns, but we think that this is best for the overall community, including possibly the police department's future needs.
Anything else on that one? Okay. Just gotta find it here.
In Council District 7?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Thank you. So vacancy, District 7. The mayor, what's the move there? I know council talked about it. Did they make a recommendation on what direction they're gonna go with that seat?
Yeah, they did make a recommendation. It is important, and I believe this went through unanimously, that the citizens of District 7 have a voice. And so the way this works is now it'll be in the paper and it's been on our city website that we're taking for folks to be appointed to the council, and they will send in a letter of interest. After 2 weeks that closes, and then those letters of interest, I believe, will go to the council.
Correct.
For their review, and then the folks that come to that do send in letters, I believe, would come to the following meeting, and that time it would be a time for the council to ask the people that did submit a letter questions on why they want to do this, or any questions that the council may have. And then I believe at that time, the council would vote to appoint somebody. Now that particular term is up in April, so there was some discussion of, do you just leave it open? And nobody was really in favor of that. Just so that the citizens of District 7, it is important that they have their representation. The hard part for us is it takes a little while to get up and running when you are in public office to understand everything going on. And I think the soonest that this person would be able to be to an actual meeting where they would be sitting in the chair representing the district would be just after we got through discussing the budget.
Yeah.
And so that's why this was this vacancy was a big surprise to everybody. We certainly, from the city's standpoint, appreciate Jason Zaleski's his work that he gave to District 7. He's very passionate about that. He was also county board supervisor. It just puts us in a tough situation going into budgets, because that's a big thing. This is a multi-million-dollar budget, and so you want to have voices. You want to have one thing that you will find here is that there is not things that are just rubber stamped. These things go through some pretty vehement conversations and discussions, and not having somebody there for District 7 during those discussions, is unfortunate. I will tell you that there are absences of aldermen through the year of different meetings, personal things going on, or medical issues or whatever. So we do have that, but just the budget time is probably one of the most important times that there are. So we'll make it through. The other 9 council members are phenomenal, all different opinions, that's for sure. And so we'll make it through. We'll make it through just fine. But again, we do appreciate what Jason Zaleski has done for the city in his term as alderman, and we wish him well. And he's leaving because his business has really taken off. So congratulations to him for that.
Yeah, I'll start with what Bob said toward the end there again about Jason Zaleski. We do thank him for his service to the community and his service to the residents of District 7. You never like to see somebody leave during their term, but I do respect him in the sense that he was making it clear he'd be having a hard time making meetings, and we certainly don't want him to be on the council just in name only if he's not able to attend the lion's share of our meetings. It's an interesting thing. State law requires that if a council position is open for a year or more, that you would need to have, I believe a special election you'd be expected to have to replace that person. If it's less than that, it's up to the council. A council can decide to fill a vacancy with appointment of their own choosing, or they can let it ride until the next election. And you look at it and you say, okay, so Jason resigns in September. Does it make sense for us to reappoint? And you say, well, we can appoint somebody by late October. That's 6 months until late April. That seems worth it. Well, what if he resigned in November? What if he resigned in January? There's a point where you might see council members saying, you know what, by the time we get somebody appointed and they get up to speed, that election's right upon us. So there's latitude given to the council. There's no specific guidance given in city code or state law that says, here's the date. If it's after December 1st, you let it stay vacant. It's entirely up to the body. But I think they made a wise choice in this case. I think we can get somebody on board in late October. Staff will give them at least a limited orientation. Maybe not the full one we do for new people in April, but we'll sit down with them, department heads, and talk about some of the issues, get them familiar with the protocol of meetings, and that they can contribute during their 6 months on the council in a meaningful way and represent their constituents. I think that was a good decision. It's just interesting how that line is fuzzy and it's open to interpretation, but I think 6 months is a good period of time for someone to step in.
And there's a very fine line, I think, on everybody, myself and the city council, all agree we want District 7 represented. That is very important. The only part there that's a little bit rough, I think, is the folks in District 7 are not necessarily making that choice.
True.
9 council members are. And so we would much rather have this open to the public, where all the people, the candidate can get out and go shake the hands and let them and meet the people and get the votes. However, whoever is appointed will be up for re-election in April anyway, so they will go through that process. But it's just, you would rather this type of thing really be given to the citizens to get their pick. But we're all very adamant that District 7 does have to be, it's important that they're represented. So I think an appointment is a good move.
Yeah, and just to add on to that, if the timing of the issue with Sean Duffy had been a little bit different, we're going to have a special election for that position, we might have been able to tack this onto that. It's not working out that way anyway. So, but I agree, it's always best to get the citizens to weigh in and make the decision as to who will represent them when we can.
Essentially though, with a shy, of voting, these District 7 residents could represent themselves. These meetings, budget meetings and everything else, they're open, right, to the public.
True.
They can go to these meetings and hear about what's going on. They can't, I guess, stand up and make a vote on their own behalf, but they certainly could be
True.
a part of the process, and even discussion if they made comments, at the appropriate time of the meeting when it would call for citizen comments or things like that, so they could give input just as they can even when there is an alderman in the chair.
Yes, they're always, absolutely, they can, when we do have meetings that are full, it's very helpful to us to see where the public is at, because when you're making decisions based on certain facts, that human input is very, very important. I will say, since in our new communication department, we are getting this out to more people. People can watch it live now on Facebook Live and other things. So the audience is definitely bigger, but on those platforms you can't talk back. And the council members can't hear what you're saying. So realistically, to your point, the best thing is for people that do have concerns is to come to the meetings so that you could see everything. When the budgets go out, those are all public records, so everybody can go through and see them, and we're encouraged. I'm very encouraged by the budget process that's going on. Steve's only working about 20 hours a day. So, and Ron and all the department heads, they have done a phenomenal job. And I will say, we have a real big issue, and I think we're going to come out and it's not going to be horrible, not going to be bad, and I will give 100% of that credit for finding the ways to make this work to Steve and his staff. We don't know. I'm getting little tidbits because there's still numbers that have to come in. But when you come in, you go to that back there and you see the city staff and you see Steve, he's got his door locked and everything like that. I mean, he's really working a lot of hours. I'm cautiously optimistic about this budget.
Yeah, let me add to that. Thank you very much. We really appreciate the support of the council and the mayor through this process, because obviously the last year has brought some challenges from some of the information we've learned. But I'm also proud of our staff, and they've really taken this to heart. We've really looked at this in terms of a base budget and making sure that we're keeping the services going that people want. Not a lot of frills, but you're not going to see big cuts. You're going to see the business moving forward, streets repaired, and it's not going to be like some big hit to the taxpayers. So it's been a lot of work, but we started well before the budget process per se began, in terms of trying to identify those areas that we could trim back, ways for efficiencies, and I think the council and the mayor will be pleased. But the mayor has been right on in front of this. That he is expecting the most from us, but he is very proud of the work we do, and I think that will be the case in October when we have these meetings coming up.
I was going to ask about, did you guys move forward then? You did move forward with a year for running,
Mm-hmm.
right, with the shared ride taxi service. Are there any major changes coming, or anything people should know, or was it just sort of status quo?
Should I take that first?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really weird, and I explained this at the meeting because, you know, we sign a 5-year agreement per se with a provider when we do the RFP, and we did an RFP last year, and people think, okay, that's all settled till 2023 or something, or 2024. But what you really do is it's a base agreement, but you have to have 1-year annual renewals. So it's basically a series of 5 1-year agreements that conceptually you've signed on to for the whole 5 years. So we look every single year to see, is the provider doing well in terms of customer service, and you know, the way they're handling their equipment, and all the things that they do. Are they first rate? And then you decide whether you want to re-up them for another year. And I will say that Running Incorporated has done a good job. We had some bumps in the road back in the early days when they started up with us, you know, a few years ago. But customer complaints are fairly low. We periodically get the person calling and saying, hey, look, I had to wait 35 minutes for a ride and I needed to get to my appointment or whatever. But those are now pretty rare, and the things are going well. So the agreement, to answer your question, is the same as last year's, same as 2019, except for a 1.7% increase to the provider based upon CPI, totally based on inflation. Otherwise, the expectations are still what they've always been as far as response times, and everything else is status quo.
That's all I had.
Can I just throw one more thing in there?
Yeah, go ahead.
I want to touch real briefly on a consent agenda item, which is from the Board of Public Works. It was the construction management. Just to let people know, and the mayor could probably add to this because he's been front and center on the project as far as the aquatic center. But we did agree to a Board of Public Works recommendation to hire or to contract with Bozen for construction management services. And I just want to put a plug in for this again. Sometimes people will say to us, why do you need a construction manager? That adds cost to the project. You know, just get a good general contractor and let it be. But every time we do a construction manager, and we've done it for the library and community center and other projects, it seems to more than pay for itself, because those folks are on top of it every day in the way that city staff can't be. And they say, wait a minute, this isn't being done quite right, or you're not using the proper materials. And they're able to be our eyes and ears on that project faithfully, and they're able to keep costs down, and they're able to make sure that we can say it was done in a first-rate job, so that no matter what general contractor we get, they do well. And Bozen is the one we've used before. We're signing them on again. They're local, which is good. Keep the money in town, and they've been very proficient on past projects in really making sure that the pencil's sharpened, and that all the expectations are being met in the field. It's just one more step on the road to a new pool.
Yeah, we're really happy with the selection that they made. Bozen is, you know, they just finished up over at the athletic field at the high school, and if you go there, it's stunning. It's absolutely beautiful. The pool, the aquatic center has come along very good. We're just over 500,000. The donations we're going out. We're aggressively going out, and so there's a lot of requests that have been made. We certainly appreciate all that you of the media have done in assisting us in getting that out there. We've seen your articles and listened to them on the radio, and we certainly appreciate that, because the more awareness that there is, the better off we all are. We on the city, we're pushing that out on the City of Marshfield website, and so overall it's going very well. We're very optimistic about the outcome of getting the full $3 million from the public. I'm very strong that we will get there. And what's very interesting is in reading on your social media platforms, it's very encouraging for us to see the comments of people, how supportive they are of the pool. That part has been very interesting. And going back, the final thing on this is going back to, you know, you're always concerned to go out and ask people to donate money. That can be an uncomfortable conversation. And what we're finding is, because going back to a lot of the same people, the citizens of Marshfield, is how excited that the people are on contributing to the city that they love. And they bring out the library and the Wenzel Family Plaza, helping out at the YMCA and the athletic facility. And of course, all the exhibits, many of the exhibits at the zoo. People really love this city, and they're very encouraged. So that was something that we were there was a little bit of anxiety, if you will, is are people still going to want to donate? Do they have donation fatigue? And that's just really not what we're seeing. We had one donation from Prevention Genetics. When you go out and ask people for money, normally these are month-long, 2-month, 3-month long. They've got to go to their boards and everything else. Prevention Genetics did $150,000 in a 15-minute meeting. We're very, very thankful for that, but that's just what we're seeing is these time frames are so much less. So we're very encouraged, and again, we appreciate the help that you all in the media are doing, getting this information out. It is thank you.
Yeah, I'll just add to that. There was a question, as the Mayor said, about appetite, given the projects that have been done. I've been here for 8 years, and we've had so many fundraisers between the Library and Community Center and Wenzel Family Plaza, and ones that aren't ours, like the YMCA and the school athletic facilities. But it speaks so highly of our community that amenities are important to them. They realize that the importance of having recreation and things for people to do, that despite the YMCA and the School District 1, which are clearly recreational type improvements in a sense, that they want to jump in and be part of this too. It's a very giving community, and we're grateful. And again, as Bob said, we're very grateful for your role in putting this out to the public.
Was there anything from closed session?
Just one minor item. It was related to a septic. Actually, it wasn't even. We didn't even take action, did we, in open session? We didn't. I don't believe. There was no open section action. What I was alluding to is that there's been discussion of a possible resolution of an outstanding bill, but I don't think we took open section action quite yet. But as far as other items, no. We're continuing to talk about an agreement with our fire union for another 3 years, and we're talking about another issue that we've talked about for a while. But I'm just rambling now, so I'll quit.
Keep going.
I'll quit being.
That'd be no.
I'll quit being. I know. I do sometimes pay the price for being an extrovert. Extroverts think out loud, and that's scary. So the answer to your question is actually no.
All right.
Thank you.